Ultimate Warrior's popularity in pro wrestling can never be overlooked. Jim Hellwig, at one point, looked like he was about to take over from Hulkamania in the World Wrestling Federation. Fans latched on to the Ultimate Warrior character in the search for something new and exciting within professional wrestling. At times, I do feel that the Ultimate Warrior's biggest enemy was the Ultimate Warrior himself. The man had the world in the palm of his hands, but he would never become the true face of the World Wrestling Federation due to things like suspensions and also the feeling that he was in Hulk Hogan's shadow. Warrior was outspoken. He felt he was worth more than what the World Wrestling Federation was giving him, and this, I feel anyway, was the reason why he never got that ultra push to the top, along with the Hogan money that comes along with it. This isn't to say that Warrior didn't get a monster push, far from it. Ultimate Warrior was booked to defeat the company's top guys, including Hulk Hogan, in a career that was still extremely successful and noteworthy. You can't mention the WWF's glory days without bringing up the Ultimate Warrior, and this is a true testament to his popularity and status within the WWF. The man was adored by his fans. He headlined WrestleMania. He had one of the most energetic and exciting entrances in the history of pro wrestling. He really is deserving of his status as a WWE legend and a Hall of Famer. This video takes a look at the Warrior's first run in the World Wrestling Federation, covering from 1987 to 1992. Jim Hellwig was born in 1959 in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Prior to getting into the world of professional wrestling, Jim was a bodybuilder, having been lifting weights from the age of 11. Hellwig's bodybuilding career was quite successful. However, while he was in California training for an upcoming bodybuilding contest, he was approached about becoming a professional wrestler. Jim was working out in a California gym at the time, a gym owned by Steve Borden, better known as Sting. Sting was also asked if he had any desire in becoming a professional wrestler along with Hellwig. Those of you who watched my video covering Sting's early career would have a fair idea of what happened next, and I do want to keep the focus here on the Ultimate Warrior in the WWF, so I'll keep things as brief as possible. Hellwig and Steve Borden became a tag team, finding work initially in the CWA in Memphis, but after moving to the UWF, the team was renamed as the Blade Runners, pretty much a Road Warriors knockoff tag team. In 1986, Jim Hellwig decided to leave the UWF and Bill Watts, and he made his debut in the Dallas-based World Class Championship Wrestling, home of the Von Erich family. Jim debuted as the Dingo Warrior, and he said he took the name Warrior due to his peers saying he looked like a warrior, while Road Warrior Animal said that Jim Hellwig was trying to rip off the Road Warriors by using the name. The first match we have recorded for Jim Hellwig in the WWF was on the 17th of June 1987, a house show in Texas where the Dingo Warrior was successful in defeating Steve Lombardi. The first televised match we have was back on August 15th, 1987, with a win over Barry Horowitz. For Warrior's first 4 months here, he mainly worked against the same guys, a mix of Jose Estrada, Horowitz and Lombardi, and he continued to use the name Dingo Warrior during these first lot of months. WWE producer Bruce Pritchard said on his podcast that Hellwig's name was changed due to Vince McMahon not knowing what a Dingo Warrior was supposed to be, and along with this, there was also the modern day Warrior Kerry Von Erich and the Road Warriors already using the Warrior name. Vince McMahon said that Jim Hellwig should be the Ultimate Warrior, the warrior who would stand above all the others, the one and only true warrior in wrestling. With the change in name came a change in persona, as the Ultimate Warrior became quickly known for his ring entrances as much as he did for his time in the ring, maybe even more so. With the famous Ultimate Warrior theme music playing in the arena, Jim Hellwig would run out to the ring looking like he had way too much caffeine, or maybe something else, who knows, but he would run to the ring, pump up the crowd, shake the ring ropes like he was trying to rip them out of the turnbuckles, and all this while the crowd was going totally wild. The Dingo Warrior wore face paint, but when Hellwig became the Ultimate Warrior, the face paint became more colourful, along with his promos. The Ultimate Warrior, I feel, was not an idea that came out of creative meetings or out of a boardroom. This character could only come out of the man portraying the gimmick. Whatever you may feel about Warrior's promos as time went on, it was Jim Hellwig who made this all come to life, and he deserves credit for it. It's easy to look back and laugh at some of the outlandish comments that Warrior would make, but it was extremely effective back in the late 80s and early 90s. It got over, it was insanely popular. But anyway, we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves here. The Ultimate Warrior went on a path of destroying enhancement guys before getting his first real WWF feud. Hercules vs. the Warrior started life as a series of house show matches in January of 1988, but the matchup also made its way to TV screens, and eventually the two squared off at WrestleMania. Before this, Ultimate Warrior and Hercules had a tug of war contest using a steel chain, and when Warrior tugged on the chain, it snapped. This led to the WrestleMania 4 match, which saw Hellwig emerge victorious in his Mania debut. The match was slotted in the middle of the card. It was pretty short, it wasn't a wrestling masterclass by any means, but Warrior's popularity is visible for all to see in this match, if nothing else. Warrior would then feud with Bobby Heenan and the Heenan family in the months that followed. SummerSlam 1988 was an important night when we look back at Warrior's career. The Honky Tonk Man had been IC champion for a very long time, going into SummerSlam with a 454-day reign. Brutus Beefcake was scheduled to work against the Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam, but an injury took him out of the match, and we didn't know who would be his replacement. When Warrior's music hits inside Madison Square Garden, the place goes nuts. Warrior squashed the Honky Tonk Man in under 30 seconds, and watching this back made me think of the genuine outrage that this would cause with today's modern fans if a 454-day title reign was ended in mere seconds, but it was definitely effective back here in SummerSlam 88. Warrior's high energy throughout the match and the crowd's reaction was enough to give you goosebumps. The Warrior's next big feud in the WWF would be one of his best. Ravishing Rick Rude and the Ultimate Warrior met in the ring at Royal Rumble 1989 in a super pose down challenge. What is a super pose down, I hear you ask? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. Two dudes posing in the ring, and the winner being decided by the fans in attendance. When it seemed like Warrior was about to get the win, the Ravishing One attacked him, leading to a Rick Rude vs Ultimate Warrior IC title match at WrestleMania 5. This one is worth watching just to see how hard Rick Rude worked to make Warrior look like an unstoppable monster. He bounced all over the ring for Warrior during this match. Anyway, Rude got the win and picked up the IC title here after Bobby Heenan held Warrior's legs during a pinfall attempt. At SummerSlam 89, Warrior got a rematch for the Intercontinental title and he defeated Rick Rude in a match that I feel was miles better than their WrestleMania showdown a few months prior. Warrior then began feuding with Andre the Giant in the house show loop, picking up quick wins against Andre that helped solidify him as a main event player. The fans were really behind Jim Hellwig. His popularity was going through the roof along with his merchandise sales, and the WWF noticed. Hulk Hogan had been the WWF's big main player for years, and it was decided that Ultimate Warrior should be given a chance to shine in the main event spot. The seeds were planted at the 1990 Royal Rumble when Hulk Hogan inadvertently eliminated Warrior from the Rumble match. Hogan was the WWF champion during this Royal Rumble win, by the way. The WrestleMania main event had not been given as a reward during this time period. Anyway, after the Rumble, Warrior vs Hogan was penciled in for WrestleMania 6 to be held in the Toronto Skydome on April 1st, 1990. Both men agreed to put their titles on the line for this epic encounter that was billed as the Ultimate Challenge. WrestleMania 6 main event really did feel like a passing of the torch, a real moment in the history of professional wrestling that should never be overlooked. Considering the in-ring limitations of both men, Hulk Hogan vs The Ultimate Warrior was a good match, made even better by the heightened emotions of the audience. Some fans were not prepared to see Hogan lose the Warrior, while others were clamouring for the Ultimate Warrior to become the next big thing in the World Wrestling Federation. Babyface versus babyface matches on this scale were uncommon in the WWF during this time period, so there was definitely a feeling of excitement and unpredictability surrounding the Ultimate Challenge. Hats off to both men here. Whatever you may think of Warrior and Hogan, they created a moment here that will never be forgotten. Warrior picked up the win, making him the first man to simultaneously hold the Intercontinental and WWF titles. The sad thing is, it's really hard to imagine the WWE creating moments like this ever again. The Warrior's title reign lasted all the way until January 91, and some see his time as the WWF champion as a flop. He defended the title against the likes of Mr. Perfect and Ted DiBiase in his initial months as champion, and he reignited his feud with ravishing Rick Rude by having a very entertaining steel cage match at SummerSlam 1990. At Survivor Series, he teamed with the modern day Warrior Kerry Von Erich, now known as the Texas Tornado, in the Legion of Doom to defeat Mr. Perfect and Demolition, another good match. I don't necessarily see this run as a flop. The crowd was still very much into the Ultimate Warrior, but I do agree that he could have been given more meaningful feuds and matches. The Rick Rude match at SummerSlam was good, but we had seen it before. It just felt like the opposition being put in front of the Ultimate Warrior didn't seem like serious threats. Despite Warrior getting equal billing and closing the show out at SummerSlam 1990, making quick work of Rick Rude in this steel cage match, it was clear that there was a greater buzz for Hulk Hogan's return here against the undefeated Earthquake. The show drew almost as well as WrestleMania 6 on pay-per-view, but it can be easily argued that people were paying here to see the return of Hulk Hogan and not so much the Ultimate Warrior. By the time 1991 rolled in, the WWF was hell-bent on creating the heel Sergeant Slaughter character to capitalise on real-world issues at the time, and Hogan vs Slaughter for the WWF title was the match that the World Wrestling Federation wanted at WrestleMania. Slaughter defeated Warrior at the 1991 Royal Rumble with the help of Macho Man Randy Savage. Sensational Sherry had been trying to get Warrior to defend his title against Savage in the weeks leading up to the Rumble, and when this didn't happen, we all should have really known that Warrior was dropping the title here at the Rumble. Slaughter would work with Hogan at WrestleMania 7, while Warrior would work with Savage in a career-ending match. The loser of this match would be forced into retirement. The Savage vs Warrior match at WrestleMania 7 was really good too. Again, this is with the Warrior's in-ring limitations being taken into consideration. You have to remember that Randy Savage was a man who liked to lay out his matches move for move in great detail before hitting the ring to perform. This helped Warrior immensely, with Savage's meticulous planning leading to a more fleshed out Warrior match. Savage was also the perfect opponent for the Ultimate Warrior. He seemed like the only man who could match Warrior when it came to intensity. With the career stipulation, it did feel like there was a lot on the line here. No one really wanted to see either man retire, but in the end it became more of a Randy Savage moment than an Ultimate Warrior moment. This isn't a bad thing at all. This was the design of the outcome after all, with Miss Elizabeth reuniting with Savage after Warrior got the win. It speaks highly of the smart booking of this match. What was supposed to be a dark outcome for Randy Savage turned out to be one of the biggest feel-good moments in WrestleMania history, and it should be noted that Warrior had found himself involved in huge back-to-back WrestleMania moments. As 1991 went on, the relationship between the WWF and Jim Hellwig became very unstable. Leading up to SummerSlam, Warrior was involved in a feud with The Undertaker. After The Undertaker had locked Warrior in a coffin during a funeral parlour segment on TV, Jake Roberts decided he would help the Warrior in overcoming The Undertaker by putting him through 3 tests. It was all a bit comical, to be honest, with the final test resulting in Warrior getting bitten by a cobra, along with Roberts revealing he had been working alongside The Undertaker all along. This was all done to set the stage for Jake Roberts versus The Ultimate Warrior, but it never happened due to an alleged pay dispute. Ultimate Warrior sent Vince McMahon a letter in July of 1991 requesting a pay increase for his WrestleMania 7 performance with Randy Savage. He wanted over $500,000, stating that the Ultimate Warrior match meant more than the Hogan match at Mania 7 and therefore he should be paid accordingly. Jim Hellwig also stated that he wanted a higher percentage of his merchandise sales, travel accommodations and a lighter work schedule. Vince McMahon agreed. He paid Hellwig the asking fee, gave him higher royalties, and got the Warrior back in the WWF. Keep in mind that the Warrior had been scheduled to appear at SummerSlam 1991, teaming with Hulk Hogan in the main event, so Vince felt his hands were tied. He didn't want to let down the paying audience in attendance, nor the pay-per-view audience watching at home. Jim worked the SummerSlam match. In his mind he had gotten one over on the WWF and all was well. After the SummerSlam match, Jim Hellwig was given a letter from Vince McMahon stating that he was now suspended. The letter confirmed that Vince McMahon had only agreed previously to Warrior's demands so that Warrior would perform at SummerSlam as advertised. And now, after SummerSlam, Vince didn't want anything to do with Hellwig. Warrior refused the suspension and instead left the WWF, trying to totally resign from the company, but this was refused. Warrior's contract didn't officially expire until September of '92. Vince and the Warrior were able to make amends, mainly due to Hulk Hogan announcing he was about to leave the company, and so Vince needed a big name to keep audiences coming to shows. Warrior came back at WrestleMania 8 to save Hogan from a post-match beatdown from Sid Justice and Papa Shango, and thus it seemed everything was alright with the world. Warrior was put into a feud with Papa Shango, which was questionable to say the least. Warrior himself said that he did not like the creative ideas pitched during this feud, but he went along with it anyway. I've covered this feud already in my Papa Shango video, but in short, the segments were filled with supernatural shenanigans which really haven't aged that well. After the Shango feud, Warrior got a WWF title match against Randy Savage at SummerSlam 92. I remember hearing the stories back then that this wasn't the real Ultimate Warrior and they used someone else to portray the character during this match. This of course makes for great clickbait videos and articles today, but even back then, it's fairly obvious that this is Jim Hellwig. There's nothing here to make you think otherwise. Anyway, Warrior won the match, but it was via countout. Survivor Series in 1992 was originally scheduled to include a match pitting Warrior and Savage against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. However, Warrior was released just weeks before this event, with many believing it was due to wellness violations and the fact that the authorities were coming down heavy on Vince McMahon and the WWF around this time. Wrestling fans, specifically you guys who take the time to watch these videos, know that nostalgia is a powerful thing. We look back at the days gone and remember how much better things used to be, and it gives us almost a comforting and joyous feeling when we go back and relive the days of our youth. Someone else who knows the power of nostalgia is Vince McMahon, and he also knows, still to this very day, how to use this feeling to the benefit of his company. Heroes of wrestling's past are frequently brought back today for special episodes of Raw and SmackDown, and also at pay-per-views such as WrestleMania and the questionable Saudi shows. More recently, Vince McMahon recalling legends to appear on TV shows has been seen as an attempt to increase viewership due to the changing landscape in wrestling thanks to the introduction of All Elite Wrestling. This isn't the first time this has happened either though, as fans will recall Bret Hart returning to the WWE when TNA Impact went live on Monday nights. Back in 1996, WCW was gaining steam and putting pressure on the WWF. Vince was about to lose two big names in Kevin Nash and Scott Hall after already losing two of his biggest draws in history, Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. Desperate times called for desperate measures, it seemed, and Vince McMahon would reach out to the Ultimate Warrior, a man who had left the WWF twice already under questionable circumstances, to try and sway the viewership in the WWF's favour. This video looks at the 1996 return of the Ultimate Warrior. Back in 1991, Ultimate Warrior threatened to no-show SummerSlam that year unless Vince McMahon paid him more money. In letters that have been obtained between Warrior and Vince McMahon, we can see that Warrior wasn't necessarily annoyed about his SummerSlam payoff, but he was more annoyed that Hulk Hogan was being paid more than he was on a consistent basis. Warrior demanded around $500,000 to appear at SummerSlam 91. Vince McMahon paid him, worried about the ramifications of an advertised top star not appearing at a huge pay-per-view, but after the show, Vince suspended the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior refused the suspension and decided to completely quit the company. He then formally sent a letter of resignation to the WWF in October of 91, but the WWF refused to accept the letter since Warrior was still under contract until September of 1992. With Hulk Hogan about to leave the WWF between mid-92 and early 93, McMahon contacted the Warrior to try and mend fences and get the guy to come back to work. Warrior made his comeback at WrestleMania 8 and began a feud with Papa Shango. Eventually, Warrior was put into the title picture and he got a shot at Randy Savage's WWF Championship at SummerSlam 92, but he won the match via countout. The initial plan was to give Warrior another run with the WWF Championship, however Vince McMahon and the WWF came under federal scrutiny regarding wellness allegations and juicing. We know the ball didn't start rolling on the trial until late 1993 into 1994, but even at this period of time, the company was still under pressure. It's disputed still to this day how and why Warrior got fired in 92. Vince McMahon himself claims it was due to Warrior experimenting with growth hormone, while other sources claimed it was due to Warrior refusing to take a test. Either way, at this period of time, there was no option but for Warrior to pack his bags and go home. Fast forward to 1996, with ratings failing and seemingly all his big stars leaving, Vince McMahon decided to do something no one thought he would ever do again. He called the Ultimate Warrior. Vince, knowing the baggage that came with the Ultimate Warrior, was willing to pay Jim Hellwig a substantial amount of money in hopes of injecting WWE audiences with nostalgia, hoping people would start talking about the return of the Ultimate Warrior and thus increase viewership numbers across pay-per-view and TV. Vignettes aired that explained how the Warrior had beaten Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan at back-to-back WrestleManias, getting those jabs in at any given opportunity. The Ultimate Warrior would return to the ring at WrestleMania 12 in a match against Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Upon arrival, Warrior already rubbed people the wrong way. Triple H, in the years that followed, said Warrior was the most unprofessional athlete he ever had to work with. Before their scheduled match, Triple H allegedly came to the Warrior with some ideas about how the match should go. Warrior took offence to the impromptu meeting, shooting down all ideas that Hunter presented to him and basically told him to get lost. The match went ahead, and as we all know, it was one of the biggest squash matches in WrestleMania history, if not the biggest. Triple H got hardly no offense in. Warrior no-sold the pedigree as Hunter was made to look like a total chump, and Warrior effectively looked like the all-destroying monster. Warrior got wind of Triple H calling him unprofessional, and he said this in reply. "I'm the most unprofessional person you've ever stepped into the ring with? Well, now, ain't that pretty? Because what I remember, Mr. Stephanie McMahon, is that you were only in the ring with me one time, and for less than 5 minutes. Well, it sure sounds like I taught you very well in the 5 minutes you had in the ring with me, because from what I hear, you are the biggest unprofessional asshole the business has ever seen. You are welcome." In the years that followed, specifically when Warrior was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, Both men seem to have put their differences aside, with Triple H saying even though it was a squash match, it was still a good experience being in the ring with the Ultimate Warrior in his first ever WrestleMania. So the next week on Raw, Warrior was brought to the ring where he gave a usual Ultimate Warrior promo where you would need to take notes and do a little deciphering. Goldust interrupted him, and this set up a feud between the two for the Intercontinental title. Not enough has been said about the Goldust vs Ultimate Warrior match at In Your House Good Friends Better Enemies. This is a strange match, and honestly, I know it feels like I'm talking bad about Warrior here, but this was an incredible waste of pay-per-view time. And in saying that, also, a booker gave this the okay, so it's not entirely Warrior's fault. But go back and watch it for yourself, you'll be amazed at how this match plays out. To start things off, Goldust had kayfabe tweaked his knee when he was ambushed by a provoked Warrior in the free-for-all. So Goldust made his way to the ring with Marlena and a bodyguard wearing some knee support. Out comes the Ultimate Warrior to much fanfare as he proceeds to totally milk his entrance. What follows next is Goldust refusing to get into the ring, at one point making his way back up the entrance ramp with Marlena. Marlena drops her cigar, which prompts the Warrior to grab it, and he begins puffing away for all to see. Vince McMahon says on commentary, "As far as we know, the Ultimate Warrior does not smoke," trying to somehow cover up that one of his top babyfaces, who is supposed to be portrayed as a role model to all the little warriors around the world, is doing the dastardly evil activity of smoking cigars. Warrior grabs Marlena's chair and has a seat in the ring, still puffing away, while Goldust grabs the mic and threatens to kiss every fan in attendance if they don't shut up. Seriously. Warrior then baits Goldust into the ring to retrieve the chair, cigar and his robe. We all understand building anticipation in wrestling, whether it's weeks before the match or the moments before the two superstars lock horns, but this was taking it to a whole other level. It went on and on and on. Nearly 10 minutes passed and the two hadn't even thrown a punch. When the match did get underway, Warrior quickly clotheslined Goldust back out onto the floor. Goldust decided to walk away, and this ended the match with a count-out loss. There was always the possibility that Goldust was legitimately hurt here during this match, which would explain how the match, and I use the term match lightly, played out in this way. That being said, they still could have done another squash match like at WrestleMania 12, and an unadvertised match maybe could have followed. But anyway, this is how it went down. It was awful from start to end. It felt like a bait and switch. Warrior celebrated by wearing the bodyguard's hat along with Goldust's wig. The April 29th, 1996 episode of Monday Night Raw saw Ultimate Warrior work against Jerry Lawler's dentist, Isaac Yankem DDS, in another 2-minute squash match. After this match, Isaac Yankem would disappear from TV screens and return as the fake Diesel later in the year. Anyway, this match set up a feud between Jerry Lawler and the Ultimate Warrior. Goldust and Warrior had the chance to redeem themselves on the May 27th edition of Raw when the two squared off in a King of the Ring qualifying match. It ended in a double countout, but the two did have a 10+ minute match. It wasn't a great match, there was plenty of stalling for sure, but this was the longest match the Ultimate Warrior had upon his return, so at least those who paid to see the Warrior got to see him in action for a longer period of time. So this brings us to the June 10th episode of Raw, the one with Warrior coming to the ring wearing a baseball cap. Jerry Lawler was in the ring being interviewed by Vince McMahon, and as a peace offering, Jerry offers Warrior a framed portrait. Warrior, in the ring wearing a baseball cap, refused the gift. Lawler then proceeds to smash the framed picture over Warrior's head. So yeah, Warrior was prepared to look totally out of character and rather ridiculous in order to protect himself from a gimmicked picture frame. I know a baseball cap doesn't make people in general look ridiculous, but it was the Ultimate Warrior wearing a baseball cap. The two were booked into a match at King of the Ring, and the most entertaining part of that match was Jerry Lawler heckling fans during his entrance. Warrior won the match at just under 4 minutes with a clothesline and a shoulder tackle. He didn't even perform the big splash. Warrior was scheduled to team with Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson at In Your House International Incident in the 6-man tag main event, but all was not well with the relationship between Warrior and the WWF. On the July 8th episode of Monday Night Raw, we opened the show with an official announcement from WWF President Gorilla Monsoon. Gorilla said that due to no showing a series of WWF live events, the Warrior is being indefinitely suspended from the WWF until he is willing to make appearance bonds to ensure he will appear at WWF shows. This announcement was added to the show as Warrior did appear on this episode of Raw, however it was taped 2 weeks prior to Warrior no showing these events. The popular story for Warrior's lack of appearances was that he was mourning the death of his father, which was disputed on the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD due to an alleged lack of communication with his family. In the WWE's defense here, Warrior didn't contact anyone to ask for time off and didn't tell anyone he wouldn't be appearing at these shows that people had already paid for. If Warrior was indeed grieving over a family loss, why wasn't he honest and why didn't he tell the company? Anyway, on this July 8th episode of Raw, where Gorilla announced that Warrior was suspended but he was still on the show anyway due to the in-ring action being pre-taped, Ultimate Warrior faced Owen Hart. This Raw match goes to highlight how others at times were tasked with making the Warrior look better than what he was. Owen was a pro here, he worked with what he had but it still wasn't much. That being said, this was probably Warrior's best match during his 1996 return. The match ended with a DQ finish when Bulldog and Vader hit the ring to attack Warrior, kind of fitting that the last match Warrior had here was him taking a beating from 3 other people. Psycho Sid ended up taking Warrior's place in the International Incident 6-man tag, and Warrior didn't appear on WWE TV again until his Hall of Fame induction in 2014. Warrior was on the receiving end of a burial when the WWE released the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD. While it is an entertaining watch and it did have some insight, it was simply made to bury the Ultimate Warrior and to make money. I'm not an Ultimate Warrior fan, but even I'll admit that there was some inconsistencies in this DVD and some of the stuff seemed fabricated. Look at this poster that was shown on the DVD for a live event that Warrior would have been potentially booked in. So can you see the problems here? Warrior is shown here as the champion in a title defense against Vader. We all know that there was no way Warrior was winning the title in the summer of 1996. We can also see here that Sid is advertised for the show, but Sid was specifically brought into the WWF to replace the Ultimate Warrior. So yeah, this attempt to bury the Warrior by the WWE was not very well researched. A Reddit user posted a picture of the same tour poster, but for a different date. You can see here that Shawn Michaels is advertised at this event as the WWF champion, and the date here is June 15th, a week before King of the Ring 96, where Shawn defended the title against the Bulldog, and Warrior had his match with Jerry the King Lawler. The photoshopped poster by WWE shows the date as July 25th, 4 days after International Incident, where a WWF title match wasn't even booked, and initially Warrior was scheduled to team up with Shawn Michaels. So looking at the correct booking of that month, there wasn't even an opportunity for Warrior to win the WWF title. Poor job WWE, poor job. While the Ultimate Warrior's win over Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6 in 1990 is remembered as one of the greatest moments in professional wrestling history, their match at WCW Halloween Havoc 1998 is remembered for the exact opposite reasons. World Championship Wrestling, Eric Bischoff and indeed Hulk Hogan tried to recapture a moment in time, and try as they might, the match turned out to be something that I'm sure both men weren't all too proud of. Warrior was paid handsomely to perform in WCW in 1998 with a hopeful turnaround of old fans tuning in for a heavy dose of nostalgia, and if fans tuned in and purchased the pay-per-view, Hulk Hogan stood to make an incredible amount of money also, thanks to those incentives written into his contract. It's also very possible that Hogan wanted to go over Warrior, securing a win over the man who defeated him all those years ago in Toronto, as if a favourable outcome in the scripted world of wrestling would make Hulk feel better. Warrior himself said he was brought into WCW so Hogan could make up for his loss at Mania 6, but you can draw your own conclusions. Warrior's time in WCW was associated with many bad things, not just the match with Hogan. From the ridiculous camera tricks that presented Warrior with mystical powers, some extremely long promos from the Warrior who wasn't always the most articulate man on the mic, a trapdoor which was used to get Warrior into a War Games match but it also severely injured a superstar earlier in the night. There was Horace Hogan and the Disciple who were also involved in the storyline. It seemed like nothing at all good came from Warrior's time in WCW, with maybe the exception of seeing the man on TV screens after his 1996 departure from the World Wrestling Federation. It's a shame too. Warrior did indeed have a legacy in wrestling, but I feel his 1996 and 1998 runs did nothing to help the guy. But anyway, sit back as we take a look at the Ultimate Warrior in WCW. So Warrior wrestled his last WWF match on the 25th of June 1996, a dark match against Vader in Wisconsin. He ended up missing house show dates, which eventually led to his contract termination, and by and large, Psycho Sid was reintroduced to the WWF in order to fill the void that Warrior left. What you may not know is that Vince McMahon attempted to re-sign the Warrior, as proven in this letter from Vince McMahon himself. Vince was prepared to pay Warrior even more money to come back to the WWF once again, quite shocking considering the past that McMahon and Warrior had with each other. From holding the company up for more money, to wellness violations, to no showing events, Vince McMahon was willing to put this all behind him to bring the Warrior back for a $750,000 per year downside guarantee. Remember too, in 1997, Vince also told Bret Hart that he could no longer afford his contract. This letter is dated December 1997, just 1 month after the Montreal incident. Warrior didn't sign this WWF deal of course, but it's intriguing to think what the plans could have been if Warrior came back to the WWF in time for WrestleMania 14. The Ultimate Warrior ended up signing with WCW for a reported $1 million. His contract was for 2 months and 3 matches, with appearances on WCW television in between. I'm also pretty sure that the Warrior must have known in the back of his mind that one of these matches would be a loss to Hulk Hogan, but anyway, just a quick note that WCW had fooled around with an Ultimate Warrior ripoff during the mid-90s known as the Renegade, but if you want to learn more about that, you can check out my Renegade video. So WCW presented Monday Nitro from Hartford, Connecticut on August 17th, 1998. On this date, the Ultimate Warrior, now known as just Warrior, would interrupt a Hulk Hogan promo in his WCW debut. In regards to Warrior's debut, Eric Bischoff said this on his 83 Weeks podcast. There was a lot of anticipation. Nobody would have ever expected him to be there with all of the hate between him and Hulk Hogan. But there was this built-in natural promotional effort without having to expand any promotional effort on our part. It was automatic. The wrestling audience wanted to see what was going to happen when these two came together because there was so much natural hate and story in the WWF. Hulk Hogan came down to the ring for the second time this evening to cut a promo on Diamond Dallas Page and talk about the upcoming War Games match at Fall Brawl. During the promo, Hulk Hogan said that there was no warrior who can defeat him in WCW in his quest to get the WCW Championship back, and right at that moment, the lights began flickering in the arena. The cameras moved over to the entranceway and out walked the Warrior. The crowd reaction was excellent here as Warrior made his way down to the ring as Hogan looked on, bottom lip quivering and all. It got even more comical when Hogan said to Warrior, "I thought you were dead." But it can't be overstated though just how loud the crowd was here for Warrior. They were happy to see him. This promo here has gotten a lot of flack over the years because it was really long and incoherent. Now, to be fair, Warrior's promos, as we all know, were always rambling and insanely nuts anyway. I don't think people should have expected Shakespeare here, but I do agree it went on too long. Warrior's promos were fun in short bursts. The WWF knew this also and used it to their benefit. 2 to 3 minutes of Warrior madness is great, 5 minutes is hitting the limits, but going close to 15 minutes here like he did during his WCW debut was a recipe for disaster. In total, with entrances, the stuff afterwards and Hogan's spot before Warrior came to the ring, the whole thing ran for nearly 25 minutes. As Eric Bischoff looked on in disbelief as this segment progressively tanked, Warrior rambled on about the virtues of justice, Hogan's self-indulgent actions, fulfilling destinies at the next level, all that good stuff. Of course, Warrior was setting up a match and feud with Hogan here, that much was obvious, but his delivery and the overall time of this promo was not agreed upon backstage. Eric Bischoff said, "On his first Nitro appearance was when I knew I was in trouble. Everything else that happened after that was a decree of how bad it was going to be ultimately. When he first showed up and we walked through it and blocked it, the promo time that is, everybody had a good idea of what the first promo was going to be. We knew that we had 8 to 10 minutes. Again, we had flexibility. We worked for the television company that owned us, so there was a little room for margin of error when you're on live. But that first promo, going back to his first appearance on Nitro, it was scheduled to only be 8 to 10 minutes, and somewhere along the 15 to 22 minute mark was when Hulk Hogan and I were staring at each other in the middle of the ring and asking, what on earth is he talking about? We were completely lost, and so was the audience, and director Craig Leathers is screaming in my ears. Everything that happened after that was confirmation that it was going to be really bad." All you need to take away here really is that Warrior was back in WCW. He told Hogan, and I quote, that he wasn't there to beat him because everyone already has, and Warrior would be seeing Hogan next week. A cloud of smoke filled the ring and Warrior disappeared as a Warrior bat sign was displayed in the arena. Look close too. After Warrior disappeared, you can see these fans point out exactly where he is. Now, if you were a fan of The Ultimate Warrior here, as in a die-hard fan, I'm sure you enjoyed this promo, and that's absolutely fine. I will say this, with all the bashing that this promo gets, it done what it needed to do. During this televised hour, Nitro did a 4.97 rating as Raw pulled in a 4.4 on the same hour. During that hour, Raw was putting on Droz vs Bradshaw in a Brawl for All match, Val Venus vs Kaientai, and DX vs The Nation, and generally speaking, people chose to watch the Warriors return over these matches. In the end, the whole episode of Nitro done a 4.9 and Raw pulled in a 4.2, so Nitro won the ratings battle on this evening. We could split hairs and argue that Warrior should have pulled in an even bigger rating. We can argue that a higher rating doesn't mean better content, but Eric Bischoff didn't see it this way. It was all about beating Raw in the ratings. Warrior came out the next week on Nitro to some new music, a fast-paced generic rock instrumental that allowed Warrior to recreate his old WWF entrance as he ran to the ring. Warrior grabbed the mic here and again he had a bit of a ramble. With a bit of translation, Warrior said that he once looked up to Hulk Hogan. He used to be the man in wrestling, but Hogan sold out when he became a bad guy. Warrior was coming after Hulk, and really, that was it. The One Warrior Nation logo and slogan, or saying, or way of life, or faction, whatever it was also presented for the first time on this night. The Warrior, DDP and Roddy Piper attacked the New World Order later on in the evening, and this trio of superstars would represent WCW in the last ever War Games match at Fall Brawl. August 31st, 1998 saw Warrior display some supernatural powers when he interrupted a Hulk Hogan promo. Almost immediately after he entered the ring, he disappeared again, and at the end of Nitro, when Hogan was again in the ring with the NWO black and white, the ring filled up with smoke and Warrior reappeared. The NWO were all laid out and Hogan ran away. The following week, Warrior attacked NWO members backstage, sending a message to Hulk Hogan. The show ended with Hogan and Warrior locked in a steel cage, but Hogan again managed to get away. The War Games match in 1998 then saw Team WCW featuring Roddy Piper, DDP and Warrior taking on Team Hollywood of Stevie Ray, Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan, and Team Wolfpack featuring Sting, Lex Luger and Kevin Nash. Some big names in this match for sure, but this War Games match ended up being one of my least favourites. When Hogan went to pin Kevin Nash for the win, the ring again filled up with smoke and Warrior appeared. The ring again filled with smoke, Warrior disappeared, but this time Hogan was left holding his jacket. Warrior then ran down the entranceway, he got in the ring and started beating up Stevie Ray and Hogan. Hogan again ran away, leaving the cage in fear of the Warrior. Warrior ended up kicking out a top panel of the cage, getting his hands on Hogan for a moment before security broke up the scuffle. DDP ended up getting the win for Team WCW. For the fake Warrior to disappear and reappear during this War Games match, a trapdoor was used in the corner of the ring. Earlier in the evening, the British Bulldog took a bump on the trapdoor, a bump that would cause Davey Smith some serious problems going forward. Davey developed a spinal infection from bumping on the trapdoor, leading to him staying in hospital for around 6 months and ultimately getting released from WCW. So you can clearly see what WCW was doing here. Hogan was extremely afraid of the Warrior, he ran away at every given opportunity, and Eric Bischoff was trying to build some anticipation for their inevitable WCW matchup. The September 14th, 1998 edition of Nitro then, even if you aren't into the Warrior stuff, you should still watch this show if only for the excellent Ric Flair return promo. I believe this Flair promo ranks up there as one of Nitro's greatest ever segments, but anyway, back to the Warrior. Hogan challenged Warrior to a match at Halloween Havoc on this night, which was odd seeing as Hogan was constantly running away from Warrior at every given chance, but anyway, during this challenge promo, smoke again filled the ring, and when the ring was cleared, the Disciple was gone. The Disciple had been with Hogan during this promo, but he had just vanished. Spooky stuff. Later that night, Warrior appeared in the ring with the Disciple, and he accepted Hogan's challenge to a match at Halloween Havoc. The Disciple would now begin playing a bigger part in this storyline. Take from that what you will. So the September 21st, 1998 edition of Nitro, and the show opened up with another smoke-filled ring. When the smoke cleared, the Disciple could be seen laying face down in the centre of the ring. The NWO walked out, smoke filled the ring again, and the Disciple had disappeared. I like how Scott Steiner couldn't have cared less about all this Warrior spooky business, and instead, he was more concerned about flexing to the cameras. Moments later, Warrior was seen in the rafters with the Disciple. Another mental Warrior promo followed, and now the insanity would be turned up a notch. Warrior lured Hogan backstage later in the broadcast, where Hogan found a One Warrior Nation logo burning in his locker room. He found the Disciple laid out beside a toilet like he had some seriously rough food earlier in the day, and I'll give you one guess as to what happened next. If you guessed that there was smoke and somebody disappearing, you'd be absolutely right. The Disciple once again vanished as Hogan began freaking out. Later in the night, the Disciple revealed he had joined the One Warrior Nation as Eric Bischoff expected us all to care. The next week, thankfully, there wasn't that much to report. The Disciple came down to the ring for a match, and remember, he was now a member of the One Warrior Nation, but he still had NWO entrance music. No idea why. Warrior came out for a promo later in the show, and the highlight of this segment was a fan trying to get into the ring. The following week then was the one that most fans remember thanks to how ridiculous the whole supernatural stuff had gotten. Warrior was featured in a pre-taped segment earlier in the show where he talked about his past with Hogan, not afraid here to talk about WrestleMania 6 while saying that history has a tendency to repeat itself. Later on in the evening, Hogan went backstage to try and find the Disciple, When he got to his locker room, he looked in the mirror and saw the Warrior. The thing was, Hogan could see the Warrior, we could see the Warrior at home, but Eric Bischoff couldn't see the Warrior. So was Hogan really going mental? Or was Eric Bischoff going mental? It was indeed very ridiculous, but to be fair, people always point to this segment, but as you've seen in this video, Warrior was teleporting around arenas and making dudes vanish on a weekly basis. This mirror stuff here was pretty silly, but it was just as silly as the stuff we had already seen. The October 12th edition of Nitro saw the reunion of the Blade Runners. The Warrior and Sting teamed up to take on Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart in the main event. No matter what you may think of WCW during this time period, this was one star-studded match right here. Warrior didn't get much action though. He didn't even bother to take his jacket off as he stood in his corner wearing a pair of jeans and wrestling boots. When Warrior did get tagged in, Bret was the sacrificial lamb for a few moments before the NWO hit the ring. A beatdown followed and the show went off the air. This one is kinda worth watching just for the stars who were in this main event tag team match, but for actual in-ring wrestling, this should have served as a warning for what was to come. Okay, we have but one more Nitro to get through before the Halloween Havoc match pitting Warrior against Hogan. Hogan made his way down the ramp and asked for Horace to come to the ring. Hogan then asked Horace to tell people his real name, leading Horace to answer that his real name was Horace Hogan. Hogan went on to explain that Horace was his nephew and he was willing to give Horace a fast-track membership into the New World Order. Just a quick side note, in real life, Horace was indeed Hulk Hogan's nephew. Anyway, Hogan said he had let Horace fight his own battles, but now was the time for Horace to stand side by side with his uncle. It was a big swerve. Hogan began attacking Horace, but what is notable here is that there was zero crowd reaction, as in absolutely nothing. Go back and watch this segment yourself and you'll see what I mean here. The crowd noise just didn't change from the promo to the beatdown. Anyway, Warrior runs down to make the save, but he ends up getting chokeslammed by the Giant. Hogan sprays NWO on Warrior's chest, drops a few leg drops, and we're off to Halloween Havoc 1998 in Las Vegas. Tony Schiavone begins the broadcast by saying that Hogan vs Warrior will be the greatest return match in the history of professional wrestling. After the first match, Hogan comes out to cut a promo, promising us all that he will beat Warrior later in the evening. The match was in the semi-main spot. The main event on this evening featured WCW champion Goldberg defending his title against DDP. And yeah, I don't think there's much I can say here that hasn't already been said. Warrior vs Hogan at Halloween Havoc 1998 was an incredibly bad match. Words can't do it justice on how bad the timing was, how bad the big spots were. Everything about the match was just really ill-conceived. I always try to find the good in things like this. I try to give an alternative outlook on stuff that's been drilled into our heads over the years, but I can't do it for Hogan vs Warrior at Halloween Havoc. If there's one positive I can highlight, it's the quite empty highlight of seeing Hogan vs Warrior in the ring once again after all this time. But the match does a great job of showing us that both Hogan and Warrior were way better performers back in 1990. Eric Bischoff called this match the worst he ever witnessed. Mean Gene Okerlund, a man who goes way back with Hogan and Warrior, called it a disaster, with Tony Schiavone echoing these sentiments also. There's an incredible amount of stalling at the beginning of the match as the pair circle around the ring and Hogan roams around the outside, something that the commentary team calls smart wrestling by the Hulkster. After a bit of brawling, Hogan and Warrior go through their classic test of strength routine, and then Hogan and Warrior run on opposite sides of the ropes, crisscrossing each other for absolutely no apparent reason. The fight spills to the outside as both men gingerly bump around the guardrails and ring posts. Then, back in the ring, there's a ref bump that leaves Nick Patrick sprawled in the corner. Hogan calls for the troops and the Warrior takes out the NWO easily, but this buys Hogan some time to get offense into Jim Hellwig. What then happens is one of the worst spots in the whole match, with Warrior comically rolling around the mat to avoid Hogan's elbow drops, and his final roll actually taking Hogan off his feet. By this point, the crowd was absolutely flat. There seemed to be no saving the match, as people realised that Hogan vs Warrior in 1998 could never live up to the nostalgia that both men created all those years ago. Up next came the big botch that most people remember. Hogan had some flash paper which he was going to light and throw at Warrior's face, creating an illusion that Hogan had just launched a fireball. First of all, it took Hogan forever and a day to light the flash paper, and when he did light it, it burned out too quickly and the spot was totally missed by a mile. The commentary team was lost for words when the planned big spot of the match was missed, and Warrior was forced to just continue beating down Hogan as if he didn't just try to set his face on fire. The crowd could be seen laughing at the missed spot, and yeah, this was it. The match was now dead in the water. Soon afterwards, Horace Hogan was seen walking to the ring holding a steel chair. Horace ended up hitting Warrior, not Hogan, with the chair. Hogan gets the pinfall win and it's over. Hogan tells Horace that he had passed the test and Horace is now a member of the New World Order. And that was that. Warrior was paid $1 million for this run so far. This incredibly bad and ill-conceived match being the cherry on top of what was really a dark spot in the career of the Ultimate Warrior. Wrestling journalists and the wrestling media destroyed the match, many saying it was one of the worst wrestling matches of all time. Now, I've seen worse, you've seen worse, but the problem here was that this was Hogan versus Warrior. No matter what happened, they were never going to live up to their match in Toronto. Many people forget that we actually had 2 more appearances from the Warrior in the weeks that followed. The next night on Nitro, Warrior cut a promo where he said more or less that Hogan took the cheap way out at Halloween Havoc, and his pinfall victory means nothing. But as we all know, I'm pretty sure that that pinfall victory meant a lot to Hulk Hogan in a weird personal and professional way. Horace the Giant Hogan and Bischoff took a few bumps from Warrior during the closing moments of this segment, while Mike Tenay says on commentary that this is the way to start a revolution in pro wrestling. I think we are a bit late for that one now, Mike. 2 weeks later, the NWO attacked the Disciple, and if you recall, the Disciple was a member, the only other member, of the One Warrior Nation. Warrior hits the ring to make the save, and we never see Warrior in WCW again. All in all, the whole return was memorable for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. And yes, I am sure there are big Warrior fans out there who enjoyed this, but at the same time, there's also big Warrior fans out there who will defend anything he ever done during his career, both inside and outside the ring. The general consensus here is that the whole run wasn't good, and as stated earlier, I try my best to find the good in wrestling's more questionable moments and matches, but I really do struggle to find any real highlights when talking about the Warrior in WCW. The only exception I can make here is that it sparked a little nostalgia, but that nostalgia was arguably ruined at Halloween Havoc 1998. Halloween Havoc didn't feature Ultimate Warrior's final match though. In 2008, Warrior had his final match against Orlando Jordan for the New Wrestling Evolution promotion. Warrior won this match, held in Barcelona, Spain, and to be honest, it's miles better than the Hogan match from 1998. The next time Warrior was featured on any kind of notable wrestling show was in 2014, when Warrior was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And to be honest, it did really seem like Warrior was now at peace with wrestling in general, and it also seemed like he was at peace with some of his old peers and enemies. On the 12th of July 2013, it was announced that the Ultimate Warrior would be returning to the WWE in the form of a pre-order bonus character in the WWE 2K14 video game. This came as a surprise to many. It's not like the WWE and the Ultimate Warrior had been on the best of terms over the years, but keep in mind it was 2K who brokered the deal, not the WWE. Of course, this would lead to doors getting reopened and the possibility of bridges being rebuilt. The Warrior and the WWE could maybe come to some sort of agreement that would allow Jim Hellwig to once again appear on WWE TV shows, and this is exactly what happened. Although no one could have imagined how short-lived his time back would actually be. Jim Hellwig once again made headlines during his brief return to the WWE, but the headlines that he made were devastating. One day after returning to WWE Raw after an 18-year absence, Jim Hellwig passed away. The news totally shook the wrestling world. No one could have seen it coming. The triumphant, long-awaited return of the Ultimate Warrior after all the trials and tribulations, and it was all gone before it truly got started. After the deal was made to include the Warrior in the WWE 2K video game, Jim Hellwig once again put on the face paint and filmed a trailer for the game. It was excellent. Fans of the Warrior went nuts seeing Jim paint his face one more time and walk through the 2K studios while talking about the destiny of the Ultimate Warrior. The commercial was filmed around 5 years after the Warrior's last match, and Jim himself said it was odd putting the face paint on once again. When asked if it was fun getting back into character for the commercial, Warrior said, "I wouldn't say it's not fun, but it's very different and very interesting to me. When I was on the road it was something I used to do every day, but I'm not the same person and I'm not that guy anymore. For me to paint my face, it makes me think of things that I don't think about all the time. When I was on the road and putting the paint on my face, I became a character and that character operated in a completely different way. Some of the qualities of the character came over into my everyday life." I think this is an interesting statement from the Ultimate Warrior, and this brings us, very briefly, to what the Warrior was up to after his WCW run had ended. I only bring this up because every other Warrior video on this channel has had comments regarding this time period, and it isn't something I want to linger on, but still, it should be addressed. Warrior became a conservative speaker who would travel to schools and universities to pretty much denounce opposing political policies and also denounce people's life choices in terms of sexuality and preferences.
Where does he come from, and is he less human than you? Is that what you mean? Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're saying?
Again, these videos focus on wrestlers' careers and not their personal choices, but the Warrior decided to be very outspoken regarding his beliefs, and it caused a ton of backlash from those who didn't maybe agree with him. There's lots of information about this online. Warrior also done a ton of vlogs and interviews talking about not only politics but his history in wrestling. If you want to learn more, the information is easily accessed via Google search. Though that statement made by Warrior about some of the character's qualities getting brought over into his personal life, it made me think of the eccentrics of the Warrior, the intensity and the complete balls to the wall attitude with no remorse, no cares, the one nation under the Warrior. And during his public speaking, you could easily say that the Warrior spoke with no cares and no remorse too. Anyway, again, these videos are about wrestling and careers in wrestling, but I know this topic will be mentioned numerous times in the comments. I've mentioned it, we're all aware of it, so let's move on. Just to highlight how bad things had gotten in regards to the relationship between the Warrior and the WWE, we should also briefly mention the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior 2005 documentary, a presentation that went straight to DVD and was produced by the WWE. As far as I'm aware, the DVD is now out of print, but if you look hard enough you'll be able to find it. Basically, the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior was a burial put on disc. Loads of superstars, past and present, and even Vince McMahon himself, had interviews on the DVD where they ripped Warrior apart. From his lack of care in the ring to his insane promos, nothing was off limits here. The WWE and its staff bashed the Warrior throughout the whole presentation, deciding this would sell better than an Ultimate Warrior match compilation. Warrior decided to file a lawsuit against the WWE in regards to the documentary. Though to give a little clarity, back in 2000, Warrior and the WWE went to court over the rights of the Ultimate Warrior name, likeness and trademarks. An agreement was reached then that the WWE would own any existing Warrior footage and they would be allowed to re-air said footage at any time, but the Ultimate Warrior character would belong to Jim Hellwig, along with the trademarks and likeness for newly created media. The 2000 agreement also noted that both parties agreed not to disparage each other and that the WWE also agreed to pay $890,000 to Warrior's Ultimate Creations as part of the settlement agreement. So at first glance, you would believe Warrior had a great case here. After all, the WWE just created a new piece of media using the Warrior's name, and it appears that the WWE are indeed in violation of this court agreement. However, when Warrior took the case to court, it was thrown out thanks to Warrior himself making disparaging comments against the WWE during his public appearances and public speeches. Because Warrior himself had dragged the WWE's name at any given chance, the courts decided that the WWE's retaliation was in fair play, and so the Warrior did not recover any damages from the self-destruction DVD and the charges were dropped. When Warrior was asked if he would accept a WWE Hall of Fame induction, he mentioned the self-destruction DVD when he said, "They need to tell the right story. They need to tell the right story for the fans. It's been interesting. Years ago they started rewriting the history of the character and then they came out with the DVD," talking about the self-destruction DVD. "I see the people who love the Ultimate Warrior. They're grown up now. They're out in the world and they've got their own kids. I've seen them and they fight. They don't sit back and take it anymore when people are on a bandwagon and spew out all kinds of stuff that's not based on any factual information. So they need to tell the right story, and that would be a way to open the door to talking about the Hall of Fame." WWE 2K14 was released in October of 2013, and fans were able to pit the Ultimate Warrior against modern wrestlers and also legends of the past. Then, on the January 13th, 2014 edition of WWE Raw, an announcement was made during the show. The Ultimate Warrior would be coming back to the WWE to receive his long overdue Hall of Fame induction. In regards to the WWE making things right regarding the self-destruction DVD, it was also announced that a new 3-disc DVD set would get released featuring Warrior's greatest matches, along with a new exclusive interview with the man himself. So it seemed the bridges were indeed being rebuilt and the Warrior was going to come home to the WWE. It should also be noted that Ultimate Warrior was approached about going into the Hall of Fame at WrestleMania 26 in Phoenix, but he declined due to still feeling bitter in regards to the self-destruction DVD. In 2014, both Vince McMahon and the Warrior felt like times had changed. The Warrior himself said his outlook on life had altered after watching his daughters grow up, and it was time for him to come back for his fans. Warrior never forgot about the DVD though. He even spoke about it to WWE cameras on his way to Stamford in 2014. Triple H spearheaded the negotiations when it came to bringing Warrior back for his Hall of Fame induction, which is interesting when you think about how Warrior squashed Hunter in their WrestleMania 12 bout, but still, as the theme has been up until now, times had changed. Warrior showed up for the Hall of Fame rehearsals and he met with Vince for the first time in years. The two embraced and expressed how good it was to see each other after all this time. Vince later said, "I saw the person that I've known and loved for so many years. He kept shedding all this angst he had. You could almost see it minute by minute, and it was a wonderful thing to see." Warrior put Vince's mind at ease when he said he was there to have fun and he wasn't going to make any disparaging comments. Warrior wanted Linda McMahon to induct him, which many people were surprised by. Warrior and Linda had a personal connection. Jim would visit the McMahon household and make himself at home, and Linda would look after Jim and listen to him when he was feeling down and alone. Warrior didn't want a superstar inducting him, he didn't want the chairman inducting him, he wanted Linda McMahon, one of the only people who would really listen to him during his turbulent years. The Little Engine That Could is an American fairy tale that was published in 1930. The story is about a long train that must be pulled over a high mountain, but its engine breaks down. After all the larger engines make excuses not to pull the train, a small engine agrees to try. The little engine succeeds in pulling the train over the mountain while repeating its motto, "I think I can." The moral of the story is to teach the value of optimism and hard work. The story was also Vince McMahon's favourite story as a child. Vince McMahon said himself that he always felt the WWE was the little engine that could, in the sense that the WWF as a territory started small but overcame giant mountains to become the worldwide leader in sports entertainment. Take from that what you will. Vince McMahon also felt that the Warrior was the little engine that could, in regards to the Warrior never accepting no for an answer and never giving up. He even told the Warrior as much. Vince told Warrior that he was the little engine that could. On the day of the Hall of Fame, Warrior brought the Little Engine That Could book to Vince, showing that Jim had remembered Vince telling him the story. Inside the pages, Warrior wrote a message for Vince. "Vince, thanks for the opportunity to go from I think I can to I know I can. Always believe, Warrior." Vince McMahon later said, "When Jim gave me that book, I looked at it with a puzzled look. I looked up at him and I knew it meant something and I tried to place it. He told me, 'You don't remember this, but it was something you told me many years ago.' To know that someone took to heart those words, who wanted to give back and let you know that he was listening all along, you don't know what you have until you don't have it." With his daughters by his side and a huge smile on his face, the Warrior walked out to accept his Hall of Fame induction. Warrior said that the most awesome thing he will ever do was be a father to his children. Warrior said that he was now a legend and he will continue to run through the hearts and minds of fans for generations to come. Warrior said he was proud of his career and he was proud to get inducted into the Hall of Fame as the crowd chanted, "Thank you, Warrior." So the next night at WrestleMania, and it's customary for the Hall of Fame inductees to come out on stage and receive a round of applause from the WWE fans in attendance. Before this happened, Warrior ran into Hulk Hogan backstage, and the two made peace with each other. The two men had been ripping each other apart in interviews at any given opportunity, and Triple H had specifically asked Hogan, as a personal favour, to not speak to the Warrior until the Hall of Fame was over, and also after WrestleMania. Triple H said that Warrior was in a good place, he was having fun, and he didn't want anything to ruin the weekend. Hogan bumped into Warrior by the off chance, and the cameras caught it. Hogan apologised to Warrior and said someday he hopes the two can start over. Warrior said he appreciated Hogan speaking to him, and he accepted Hogan's apology. Warrior admitted to Hogan he had made mistakes too, and so these two legends of people's childhoods were able to put the past behind them. And if things had turned out differently for Warrior, who knows where this could have led to. Anyway, Warrior came out at WrestleMania 30 to a thunderous ovation as the fans paid respect to the 2014 Hall of Fame inductees. The following night on Raw, Warrior was given the opportunity to come to the ring one more time while the music played, and he had the chance to address the fans. Warrior's promo, in hindsight, seems so foreshadowing. Of course, nobody could have predicted what would happen next, but when you go back and watch this promo, it's almost as if Warrior knew what was going to happen. In a way, you have to think of Warrior's previous promos, what people would say about Warrior's previous promos and how he made little sense, but on this night, it seemed like he made way too much sense. Warrior said, Every man's heart one day beats its final beat, his lungs breathe their final breath. If what a man did in his life makes the blood pulse through the body of others and makes them believe in something deeper and larger than life, then his essence and spirit would be immortalized by the storytellers, by the loyalty, by the memory of those who honour him and make the running the man did live forever. I am Ultimate Warrior, you are the Ultimate Warrior fans, and the spirit of the Ultimate Warrior will run forever. On April 8th, 2014, one day after Warrior's appearance on WWE Raw, it was announced that Warrior had passed away. People backstage during WrestleMania weekend noted that Warrior was sweating profusely and breathing heavily backstage. He seemed quite frail at times also, it was reported. It was later revealed that Warrior passed away due to a heart attack, and he was only 54 years old. Although the relationship between the WWE and the Warrior had been strained over the years, the fact that both sides got some closure in the very final days of Warrior's life is kind of poetic in a way. It sounds cheesy and it sounds corny, but the timing of it all made it seem like Warrior's last task was to come back to the WWE, kind of making amends to his legacy and allowing his name to be remembered as legendary instead of tarnished. The WWE created the yearly Warrior Award, which is given out at WrestleMania. The award itself is given to those who live their life with courage, strength, and perseverance. The award is bestowed on members of the public, along with backstage employees of the WWE who don't get recognition for the difference that they make. And so, with this Warrior Award, the Ultimate Warrior's legacy continues to live year after year.